Hear, O Israel, remember this. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. The Lord is one, Israel.
The 70th anniversary of Israel, surely a momentous occasion not just for Jews but for Christians, but for people who are interested in history. How this people who survived 2,000 years of largely persecution throughout Europe and were scattered to the four corners of the earth could come back largely through misfortune and through reacting to historical circumstances to once again take their country and to survive the attacks that they received against it and to live all the way up to this present time and up to the 70th anniversary, which will take place in 2018. So this is quite an occasion for them and for us. And from the Christian and particularly Catholic perspective, we have to really examine, and we have been examining ourselves in relation to these who are the chosen people, the original chosen people of God. The interesting story from the point of view of the United States and the Catholic Church here is a nun who in the 1940s and 50s, as I understand it, started to examine once again as a teacher the relationship that Catholics had to Jews. And while reading textbooks that she was using in class, became quite shocked and, as she actually said, ill at the depiction that the Jewish people had, and decided to spend her life trying to change this. And so she wrote her thesis for her PhD, and this became part of the background for the changing attitude that the Catholic Church then took on in Vatican II, where they declared definitely and finally that the Jews as a people were not responsible for the death of Christ, and that they were still treasured and favoured because of the fathers, because of the patriarchs, by the Lord himself.
By the rivers of Babylon, we sat down and we wept when we remembered Zion. On the willows near by, we hung up our harps, and we wept when we remembered Zion.
So Vatican II, the documents of Vatican II pointed out, this is the first time the Church had said this, they said, neither all Jews indiscriminately at the time nor Jews today can be charged with the crimes committed during his passion, during the Passion of Christ. It says the Church is the new people, but Jews should not be spoken of as rejected or accursed as if this followed from Holy Scripture. So this was starting of a new attitude, and quoting more the sections in the Scripture where it says about what is going to happen in the future with the Jews. The Apostle Paul maintains that the Jews remain very dear to God for the sake of the patriarchs, since God did not take back the gifts he bestowed or the choice he made. Together with the prophets and that same apostle, the Church awaits the day known to God alone when all peoples will call on God with one voice and serve him shoulder to shoulder. Even sacred Scripture itself says, through the words of St. Paul, did God reject his people? By no means. St. Paul talks about this whole question in his letter to Romans, and he asks in chapter 11, I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means. In fact, he says, if some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, have been grafted in amongst the others, now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, which is the Jewish people, do not boast over these branches. If you do, consider this, you do not support the root, but the root supports you.
I was glad when they said unto me, let us go to the Lord's house. Now here we are, standing at the gates of Jerusalem.
So to get back to the 70th anniversary of Israel in 2018, what would I like to see? Well, the first thing I would like to do is I'd like to bring the music of Hear, O Israel, the music that I brought to Israel in 1988, which tells the story in music and choruses and song of how this people of God have traversed the ages and finally come back to their own land. It's a miraculous story, and I've used scripture to show this story as the continuing revelation of God.
Standing at the gates of Jerusalem.
I'd like to have that performed once again and have some friends who want to help me. But secondly, I'd like to see as a permanent memorial in Israel to the thinking of Sister Rose and the thinking of the Vatican Council, the recent thinking that we've understood that we were not doing right by the people of God. I would like to see a monument, if possible, somewhere near the Western Wall, which would have inscribed in it perhaps these words of John the 23rd, when he said, "The mark of Cain is stamped upon our foreheads. Across the centuries our brother Abel was lain in blood which we drew, and shed tears which we caused by forgetting thy love. Forgive us, Lord, for the curse we falsely attributed to their name as Jews. Forgive us for crucifying thee a second time in their flesh, for we knew not what we did."
I say to Jerusalem, peace be with you.
So I invite you to join us for Israel's 70th anniversary in 2018, and hopefully come to Jerusalem and share in the music of Hear, O Israel, maybe to sing in it if you had a performance in your own country by then, and also to be there for the laying of this memorial, this permanent memorial, where we will recognize in stone with words that, like John the 23rd's, our legacy with regard to the Jewish people, and that we have turned a corner, that we now recognize what we didn't see, that God has been with them, preserving them to this day.